The idea of galactic law in Star Wars is presented as vast, ancient, and authoritative. Yet when examined structurally, it dissolves almost immediately. Because law without enforcement is not law at all, it is aspiration. And the Republic confuses the appearance of governance with its actual function. Despite presiding over millions of systems, the Republic never maintains a centralized civilian law enforcement body. There are no standardized patrols moving between worlds, no detectives tasked with interstellar crime, no unified investigative service, operating independently of politics or mysticism. The Senate produces statutes, resolutions, and treaties at scale. But there is no institutional machinery to carry them into reality, no equivalent of a galactic marshal service, no neutral force empowered to investigate crimes that cross planetary boundaries. This absence is not a minor oversight. It is the foundational flaw of the Republic. Law exists primarily as text, not as practice. Citizens may hear that slavery is illegal, that trade exploitation is prohibited, or that systems are protected, but they rarely see anyone arrive to enforce those claims. As a result, local systems are left to police themselves entirely. Justice becomes a planetary commodity rather than a universal right. Wealthier core worlds maintain professional security forces and legal infrastructure, while outer systems rely on militias, gangs, or nothing at all. This decentralization ensures that law is uneven by design. What is illegal on Coruscant may be tolerated or ignored on Tatooine, and there is no higher authority capable of correcting the discrepancy. The Republic tolerates this fragmentation because it lacks the capacity to do otherwise. Local governance fills the vacuum however it can. Some systems appoint sheriffs, others outsource to mercenaries. Many fall under the control of corrupt officials whose power is sustained precisely because no outside oversight exists. Justice becomes arbitrary, dependent on geography, political relevance, or economic value. Citizens quickly learn that the law does not protect them universally. It protects those who are visible, valuable, or strategically important. In this environment, the Jedi are often mistaken for law enforcement, but structurally they do not patrol streets, investigate theft, dismantle trafficking networks, or resolve routine disputes. They appear only when situations escalate into existential or politically inconvenient crises. Jedi interventions are rare, selective, and reactive. They are dispatched when the Republic is embarrassed, threatened, or destabilized, not when ordinary people are harmed. This makes them emergency tools, not civic institutions. A Jedi does not arrive because crime is rampant. They arrive because the crime has become symbolic, force-related, or diplomatically dangerous. Countless systems suffer quietly without ever drawing Jedi attention. This distinction matters. Policing is about prevention, consistency, and presence. Crisis response is about containment after failure. The Jedi embody the latter, not the former, and the galaxy pays the price in unchecked criminal expansion. The Senate exacerbates this illusion by passing laws it cannot enforce. Anti-slavery measures exist alongside open slave markets. Trade regulations coexist with monopolistic cartels. Treaties are signed and ignored with equal frequency. When corporations, guilds, or entire systems violate these laws, the Senate responds with debate, committees, and procedural delay because it has no teeth, no enforcement arm capable of compelling compliance. The Trade Federation blockade of Naboo is not an anomaly. It is a demonstration. A corporate entity openly violates Republic law and faces no immediate consequence. Negotiations replace enforcement, and legality becomes negotiable. This sends a clear signal across the galaxy. Compliance is optional unless someone powerful decides otherwise. Law becomes a suggestion rather than an obligation. Crime thrives precisely in the spaces where jurisdiction ends. Hyperspace lanes, border worlds, neutral systems, and trade routes become lawless by default, because no authority claims responsibility for them. Smugglers exploit customs gaps. Pirates operate between patrol zones that do not exist. Slavers move openly where enforcement is absent. The in-between spaces of the galaxy are not ungoverned accidentally. They are ungoverned structurally. The Republic's map may appear unified, but its authority is fractured. Power fades rapidly with distance from the core, and no mechanism exists to project civilian law consistently across that distance. This creates a galaxy where crime is not aberrant. It is adaptive. Syndicates flourish because they provide predictability, where the Republic cannot for many citizens. Criminal organizations are the only entities that enforce contracts reliably. The illusion of galactic law persists because it is rhetorically useful. The Senate speaks as if order exists everywhere, masking the reality that enforcement is selective and reactive, not universal. Citizens learn quickly that safety depends not on statutes, but on proximity to power. If you are near a core world, you are protected. If you are not, you are expendable. This structure does not merely allow crime, it incentivizes it. Because risk is low and profit is high in unclaimed spaces, the Republic creates a black market ecosystem by failing to occupy its own legal territory. The Jedi cannot compensate for this failure. They are too few, too reactive, and too narrowly deployed. Expecting them to function as law enforcement is like expecting surgeons to replace public health systems. By confusing moral authority with civic infrastructure, the Republic convinces itself that order exists, while leaving millions of systems effectively outside the law. This section exposes the uncomfortable truth. There is no real galactic law in Star Wars, only the appearance of it, sustained by language, symbols, and occasional intervention, while daily justice is left to chance. As we transition into the next section, the analysis shifts from absence to substitution, examining how power stepped in where law failed, and how order came to be enforced not by legitimacy, but by fear, profit, and violence. When the Republic collapses, it does not leave behind a vacuum of order. It leaves behind a vacuum of law, and that distinction matters, because what fills the gap is not legitimacy, but power, enforced not through consent or due process, but through fear, leverage, and violence. The Empire does not restore law, it replaces it entirely. Stormtroopers are not trained as investigators, mediators, or civil servants. They are shock troops, deployed to suppress, occupy, and intimidate. Their presence signals compliance through terror rather than justice. Crime does not disappear under the Empire. It adapts. Organized syndicates go underground. Others integrate directly into imperial structures. Corruption becomes systemic because fear-based enforcement discourages reporting and rewards silence. Imperial order functions because disobedience is punished brutally and arbitrarily. Not because laws are respected, civilians comply not because they believe in the system, but because resistance is lethal. This distinction erodes legitimacy completely. When law is indistinguishable from violence, citizens stop viewing rules as moral obligations and start viewing them as survival constraints. Obedience becomes transactional and temporary. The Empire centralizes power efficiently, but never builds civilian trust. Policing is indistinguishable from occupation, and justice is subordinate to security priorities. The result is stability without fairness, predictability without rights. Into this environment step corporate security forces, which effectively replace public law enforcement across much of the galaxy. Trade federations, mining guilds, and mega corporations deploy private armies to protect assets rather than people. These forces answer to shareholders, not citizens. Their mandate is profit preservation, not justice. For most civilians, law enforcement becomes whoever owns the largest gunship in orbit. Corporate justice is swift and brutal. Disputes are resolved through force, not courts. Workers are expendable. And accountability flows upward, never outward. Exploitation becomes normalized because it is profitable and unchallenged. The Republic allowed this precedent by legitimizing corporate militarization during peacetime, and the Empire inherits and expands it, outsourcing control while maintaining plausible deniability. Bounty hunters emerge as another substitute for law. Contracts replace courts. Justice becomes a marketplace. Capture or kill. Clauses eliminate due process entirely. Guilt is assumed, not proven. The existence of legal bounty contracts reveals how little faith the galaxy has in institutional justice. Why pursue investigation and trial when enforcement can be privatized and lethal? Bounty hunters are celebrated not because they are righteous, but because they are effective. They succeed where institutions never existed, filling gaps with violence that is at least predictable. This system advantages the wealthy and powerful. Only those who can afford contracts receive justice. Everyone else remains invisible. The law does not fail equally, it fails selectively. When the rebellion succeeds, the pattern repeats. The Empire is destroyed, but law enforcement is not rebuilt. Liberation occurs instantly. Governance remains theoretical. The rebels excel at sabotage and uprising, not at institution building. They remove occupiers, but do not replace them with civilian policing structures, courts or oversight bodies. Freed systems celebrate autonomy, but autonomy without enforcement produces fragmentation. Local militias take control, old grudges resurface, criminal groups return openly. The new republic inherits the same structural flaws as the old: laws without enforcement mechanisms, faith in symbolism over infrastructure, and an aversion to centralized authority born from trauma rather than strategy. This reluctance proves fatal because without credible enforcement, law remains optional. Compliance depends entirely on whether someone is willing to show up with force. Across every era, order exists only where someone is prepared to shoot, not where institutions are prepared to adjudicate. Law is reactive, localized, and inconsistent. If no fleet arrives, no marshal intervenes, and no power cares, the law effectively does not exist. Morality becomes irrelevant without enforcement capacity. This is the hidden constant of Star Wars. Civilization is not upheld by systems, but by whoever has ships, soldiers, or leverage at the moment. Stability is temporary and contingent. The galaxy cycles endlessly because it never solves this core problem. It replaces one enforcer with another, one banner with another, but never builds civilian institutions capable of surviving regime change. Heroes topple regimes, villains seize control, corporations exploit gaps, and ordinary people adapt because they have learned that law will not protect them consistently. Star Wars presents conflict as ideological, but beneath it lies an administrative failure. No durable mechanism exists to translate law into lived reality across space. The uncomfortable truth is that the galaxy is not lawless by accident. It is lawless by design, structured around decentralization without enforcement, and power without accountability. Until that changes, order will always be imposed, never earned, and justice will remain something that happens only when someone powerful decides it should. This completes the analysis of how law in Star Wars is an illusion, and how power, not legitimacy, becomes the true currency of order across every era of the galaxy.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.